I am a simple man with a simple dream. I like to play Elden Ring and make builds in Elden Ring, and then I invade other people in Elden Ring with the builds that I made. And then I show you what happened. And this is a simple build with a dream. A dream to recreate Bloodborne at least a little bit. That started off humbly. Humble origins. We started Hero, because I was thinking I would add some arcane to this build, but then it takes 60 strength to use the Giant Crusher, which is kind of like the Kirk Hammer. You know, it's like we have the Kirk Hammer at home. Is the Giant Crusher with a soft swap straight sword. So started Hero, and then just went all strength, which is fine. As long as I don't level up Dex, Hero stays the most optimal starting class. Not that it matters a lot, but, you know, it matters a little. Especially when you're trying to play one of these goofy builds. But, humble origins. Humble origins. This invasion right here, I hadn't even added the greatswords to the build yet. I don't think I've added the greatswords to this build for any of these invasions that you're going to see here today. These are the earliest invasions that I have with this here build. And so we're just rocking Lord Sworn Straight Sword, 10 Strength, 10 Dex, and Giant Crusher, 60 Strength. The talismans that I'm going to be using, mainly I think the Turtle Talisman. Obviously, I need the Great Jarseal's Arsenal because I need a ton of endurance on this build to soft swap to a Giant Crusher. Thankfully, Bloodborne armor, quote-unquote, is mostly just clothes. So my clothes aren't very heavy on this build, which is nice. So I don't have to account for that with the endurance. Thankfully, we have at least that going for us. I have Quick Step on the hammer. You know, because in Bloodborne, you have Quick Step. And honestly, Quick Step is a really nice Ash of War to have on one of these big monster weapons. People might ask, and have asked, why not Bloodhound Fang? I just like Quick Step better. Bloodhound Fang's travel distance is so far that it actually kind of works against me a lot. And so I just go with Quick Step. It might not be too far for some people, but I'm going to be going for a lot of backstabs. And I'm going to use Quick Step to put me in position to get those backstabs. And Bloodhound Step would take me too far away from my opponent's back to do stuff like you are about to see. What we're about to do to this Whip Man. Quick Step is perfect for that. Bloodhound Step would have taken me just a little too far. And you could say, well, couldn't you adjust the space? And you could, but in the heat of the moment, that's kind of a pain in the ass to do. And for whatever reason, I'm just more comfortable doing it with Quick Step. So that's why Quick Step. However, having Quick Step as your Ash of War really kind of limits what you can do in certain situations. It's always nice on these builds that have like a giant weapon. It's always nice to have an Ash of War that's relatively fast and capable of hitting a lot of people. So what ended up happening was I eventually decided to switch to the well, not switch to, but add the Brick Hammer to the build, as well as the Giant Crusher. And the Brick Hammer, I will put a different Ash of War on. But we'll get to that when we get to that, and we're not to that yet. So, the 60 strength, I landed the spinning slash there, and then swapped over to the hammer for the roll catch punish. And that's why you need 60 strength. That's why I need 60 strength on this particular version of the build. Because I'm going to be one-handing that hammer occasionally in moments like that. And moments like that are kind of the whole build. You know, that like quote-unquote trick weapon at home that dollar store weapon transformation. So, right now, I currently am wearing the Prosthesis Wearer's Talisman. And I know that because when I equipped the jar cannon and shot it, I had the stats to use it, which means I have the Prosthesis Wearer's Talisman on, which is not a talisman that I need to keep on me. Oh, I was wrong. I didn't see the X. Okay, my bad. Right. See the little X on the jar cannon? That means I don't have the stats for it. The Prosthesis Wearer's Talisman will give me 5 dex and give me the stats that I need in order to use it. And in situations where I have time to make that swap and switch to that, that's fine. But in situations where I don't, like that, it's also fine, because the explosive bolts and the lightning great bolts, those are going to do enough damage that, it'll be okay if I don't make that swap. Also, the bolts can typically knock players down, that's the massive, big benefit, is that you have these bolts that can knock people off of tree branches and stuff like that. That's the main thing we have the jar cannon for. That, and for pestering people who are really far away and not making progress, or people that just like to camp at the Grace when they get invaded. More important than all of these things is the fact that there's a cannon in Bloodborne, right? I always have the cannon on my build, and I never feel bad about using it. But with the Bloodborne thing, I don't even have to pretend like I have to answer, oh, why I put that on the build. I put it on the build because it rules. But with a Bloodborne build, it rules and thematically accurate. So there's a ton of weapons that you could use in Elden Ring that are sort of like the Bloodborne, if you got your Bloodborne weapon off Wish, right? There's a lot of weapons like that. You could make a build that uses more, but since I like the church weapons in Bloodborne, which is like the Kirkhammer and Ludwig's Holy Blade, and the Watchdog Greatsword requires no dex. Giant Crusher requires literally no dex. Brick Hammer requires literally no dex. And the Lordsworn Straight Sword requires only 10 dex. So, yeah. That's what I went with. That's what I wanted, and that's what makes sense on the build. But if you wanted to do, the Mantis Blades as, a Saw Cleaver type thing, or the Giza Wheel, there's probably some others that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. I guess Rivers of Blood is kind of like a Chickage. There's a million ways you could go about doing a build like this, but this was the way that I went, because this is the stuff that I like. So for these early invasions here, it's just me and a straight sword and a hammer. And I was kind of... that will never not be funny. That Bugs Bunny ass. Anyway, it's just a sword and a hammer. That's all I got right now. And the straight sword, the Ash of War I went with, I really like Sword Dance. But when you're doing builds like this where you don't have access to tools, Spinning Slash on a straight sword. If you're an invader, it can hit multiple people and keep you relatively safe while doing it. So Spinning Slash was kind of a must, but I really love Sword Dance. And both of those moves are capable of being activated, hitting, and then they have a second button press that you follow up with, right? In the case of Sword Dance, it's the last hit, and in the case of Spinning Slash, it's the last 2 hits. You get 1 spin on Spinning Slash, and then if you press it again, you get an extra 2 spins. With Sword Dance, you get 2 spins, and then if you press it again, you get a third sort of chop attack, right? But you can opt, instead of doing that last hit, you can instead opt to soft swap to the hammer now, right? And that's fun. And the way that they have changed, I got really good at swapping weapons and stuff in Dark Souls 3, but they have sort of nerfed the ability to do that. by making it where you can't hard swap in Elden Ring until an animation is like completely clear. And the reason they did that is because there's a shit ton of glitches associated with like that input buffer, like inputting or doing a weapon swap while you're in that, you know, animation as it's before it finishes or right as it finishes. There's like a ton of glitches in From Software games. And so, rather than deal with all that, they just thought to themselves, okay, let's just put like a cooldown on when you can actually swap, right? And so, it kind of gives the soft swap thing a meaning. It gives it a purpose on this build. Because it's just easier. And it actually works. And there's no cooldown for that. You saw me equip the Axe Talisman there. That's because I'm about to do my favorite attack. There's nothing more satisfying than landing that. And now our opponent, he shook. I'm just kind of enjoying this. But I don't want to torture him. That's the video. I'll have more real soon. Thanks for watching. Later, y'all.